Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Emma Carter took a deep breath as the bus pulled away from the last stop, and the tall, black iron gates of Ravenwood Manor came into view, towering like a reminder the world inside was nothing like hers. She adjusted the frayed button of her worn coat, clutching the old canvas bag in her arms. In it, a homemade lunchbox, a notebook, and the wrinkled job offer letter she had folded and unfolded too many times. Her very first full-time housekeeping job. This month's wages, if not deducted, would be just enough to cover her younger sister Lily's next semester of tuition. The gatekeeper pressed a button, and the heavy doors slid open. A gravel path stretched endlessly toward the main house, flanked by perfectly trimmed lawns and imported rose bushes without a single stray leaf. Everything was flawless, so flawless it felt cold. Emma whispered to herself as she walked. Don't spill anything. Don't trip. Don't breathe too loud. She wasn't sure if breathe too loud was actually in the job description, but the pressure made it feel like the first rule of thumb. The front door opened before she could ring the bell. Mrs. Sharma, the head housekeeper, a middle-aged woman with neatly pinned silver hair, scanned Emma from head to toe with a measuring look, then gave a curt nod. On time. Good. Come in. The marble floor gleamed like a mirror beneath their feet. Large abstract paintings hung on the walls, beautiful, expensive, anonymous. No family photos, not a single smiling face, only the cold glow of overhead lights and the steady tick of a grandfather clock. Emma shivered. For such a large house, it seemed to lack the one thing her tiny 9-square-meter rental room shared with Lily always had. Human voices. Mrs. Sharma handed her a leather-bound handbook. Read. Memorize. Do not enter the second-floor work area after 9 p.m. Do not open the music room without permission. When the master is home, remain silent. Answer briefly. Do not stare. Do not ask personal questions. Don't breathe too loud. Emma blurted out. The words slipped before her brain could stop them. Mrs. Sharma blinked. Then something no one would expect at Ravenwood Manor. The corner of her lips trembled. I haven't written that line down, she replied, voice softer. But it wouldn't hurt. They passed through the kitchen, where Liam, the burly chef, was pulling trays of bread from the oven. The smell of melting butter made Emma's stomach growl. Liam caught sight of her and winked. New recruit? Welcome to the Ice Kingdom. He pointed at the ceiling, where the AC hummed. Kidding? Well, mostly. The kitchen chuckled softly before quickly going silent again, as if even laughter might result in docked pay. In the staff lounge, Mrs. Sharma handed her a uniform, an apron, and a house map. This morning, clean the living room, replace the flowers, and check the vacuum robot. Don't stare at it. It has a camera, and stay out of Mr. Ravenwood's way unless called. That name seemed to drop the temperature a few degrees. Julian Ravenwood, billionaire, young, severe, busy. Emma had read online before arriving. A man rarely seen in the press, famous for decisions as cold as ice, but sharp as a scalpel. She swallowed hard. Just do your job well. Measure every step. She got to work using a glass cleaner, a bamboo cloth, and thin gloves. Each time she wiped a table, her warped reflection stared back from the polished surface. She swapped out the crystal vase with fresh camellias. In the corner, the round robot vacuum waddled around, its surface decorated with paper eyes someone had stuck on, making it look sulky. It bumped into Emma's foot, beeping reproachfully. Sorry, Sir Robot, Emma whispered, lifting it over a rug so it wouldn't get stuck. The robot beeped again and immediately circled back to clean the spot where she had just stood. Diligent little thing. She smiled, hiding a broken hydrangea bloom in a discarded paper cup, planning to place it in the staff room, a small spot of color in this enormous, chilly house. Near 10, the intercom chimed. Mrs. Sharma appeared, voice low but firm. The master is home early. Everyone, in position. The air changed instantly. Liam put away his knives, and cleaners vanished. Emma clutched a tray mineral water with a few lemon slices and stood by a column exactly where Mrs. Sharma had shown her. Don't spill. Don't spill. Don't. Footsteps echoed on marble, steady and assured. Julian Ravenwood entered the doorway as if it had been built for him alone. Tall, lean, in a fitted charcoal gray coat, navy tie, and a thin silver watch peeking beneath his cuff. He didn't need to look around to know where everything was. He belonged to this order, this schedule. His eyes stayed on his phone. The assistant behind him reported in a monotone, like a weather broadcast. Emma braced herself, waiting for the moment she would have to step forward with the water. When the assistant stopped, Mrs. Sharma signaled. Emma stepped up, both hands on the tray. "Sir, your water." She froze. The vacuum robot suddenly swerved in front of her, like a small pet demanding attention. Emma panicked and stepped back. Her heel caught the edge of the rug. The tray tilted. A lemon slice fell like a thin golden moon, followed by the entire glass of water. In an instant, cold liquid splashed across Julian's polished black shoes. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the robot stopped, letting out a tiny beep as if to announce the unexpected accident. Oh no. Emma nearly collapsed, snatching the towel from the tray and dabbing frantically at his shoes. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'll pay for the polishing. Or buy a new pair." "No. I can't afford a new pair, but I can clean them right now. 5 minutes. 10. That's enough." Julian's voice was deep, decisive, not loud but firm enough that Emma's fingers froze mid-motion. She looked up. This close, she saw his gray eyes, not icy, but like steel. Cold because it had been forged too well, not because it was born that way. "Stand up," he continued. Emma jumped up so quickly she nearly bumped her head against his chin, then stumbled back. "I'm sorry." She had lost count of how many times she'd said it, and then, as if to save herself, her mouth blurted something ridiculous. "At least your shoes got moisturized." Dry leather cracks sadly. "Mrs. Sharma coughed softly, probably to swallow a laugh. The assistant gaped. From the kitchen, Liam pretended to adjust his chef's hat, clearly hiding his face. A brief pause, like a clock hand touching the mark. Then Julian's brow moved neither a frown nor a release. He looked down at his wet shoes, then at the towel in Emma's hands, then at those hands, clean but calloused, marked by days of work. "Name?" he asked. "Was Emma. Emma Carter." She swallowed. "I just started today." "Reason for applying?" The question struck cold against her spine. "Tell the truth or something prettier." Emma drew a breath. "To pay for my sister's tuition, sir, and to cover 2 months' overdue rent." Another beat of silence. In it, Emma saw her reflection on his wet shoes, hair hastily tied, collar slightly wrinkled, hands clutching the towel like a lifeline. Julian gave the slightest nod. "No need to pay for the shoes, and don't make things up next time." Her eyes widened. "I didn't." He tilted his head slightly. His gray gaze cut through her defenses, but his voice was calm. "I wasn't talking about tuition. I meant the leather moisturizing." The corner of his mouth shifted, just a thread of humor. A muffled snort came from the kitchen. Liam must have swallowed water wrong. Julian stepped back half a pace to keep the water from spreading further, then glanced at Mrs. Sharma. "Change shoes. Wipe the floor, Miss Carter." He paused, as if weighing something. "Follow the rules, but don't run inside. And don't let the robot lead you." Emma flushed. "Yes, sir." He turned away, resuming the assistant's report, as if the incident were nothing more than a speck of dust in his precisely timed schedule. Yet, as he passed the camellia Emma had just arranged, he slowed half a step, glancing at the creamy petals and slender green leaves. Just a fleeting moment, then he moved on. When the office door closed behind him, the living room exhaled with everyone inside. Liam walked over, slipped a piece of buttered bread into Emma's hand. "Survived. Rookie." Mrs. Sharma wiped the floor, casting Emma a glance. "You spilled water on his shoes. And you're still here? Impressive." Emma clutched the tray, her heart still pounding. Before leaving, she bent to pick up the lemon slice lying near the robot's wheels, looked at its stickered eyes, and whispered, "Don't tease people anymore, okay?" The robot beeped and rolled off, leaving behind a spotless shine, as if no spill had ever happened. In the staff lounge, Emma placed the broken hydrangea into the paper cup and added a little water, a small, gentle spot of color, after a tense morning. She texted Lily, "I'm okay. I haven't been fired. I'll be home early to cook noodles." The message showed seen almost instantly, followed by a heart emoji. Emma's chest softened. She opened the handbook. The strict, straight-line rules mirrored this house. In the margin of the first page, she quietly wrote in pencil, "Rule 0. Don't let anyone feel humiliated." She underlined it. Maybe even a mansion could feel warmer, starting with small things like that. The faint sound of a piano drifted from upstairs, brief, as if someone pressed a key then abandoned it. Emma looked up at the ceiling. Perhaps no one else noticed, but to her, The sound was like a tiny exclamation mark at the end of the day. This place wasn't completely silent. Somewhere, someone was practicing life with sound. Emma stood and retied the strings of her apron. "All right," she told herself, and the robot lurking in the corner. "Let's try to make this giant place a little less cold. One room at a time." And she returned to the living room, where the light stretched into long reflections on marble, ready to begin again, more careful now, but steadier too. At Ravenwood Manor, her first day had not been perfect, but it was real, and sometimes reality was the warmest thing of all. Emma woke very early, before the sun had even risen behind the distant mountains. Mrs. Sharma had assigned her the morning task: check the entire living room, wipe down the wooden surfaces, and polish the stair rails. The mansion was so vast that she kept walking and walking down endless halls, the pale yellow lights casting against the cold marble floor. The more she walked, the more she noticed something strange. There wasn't a single family photograph. The high walls held only abstract paintings, harsh lines, somber tones. Back at her tiny rented room, cramped enough that she and Lily had to fold away the dining table just to roll out a mat to sleep, there were always photos. Pictures of the sisters hugging at school festivals, snapshots of them wearing hand-knit wool hats in winter. Here, every stretch of wall was bare and sterile, as if deliberately erasing any trace of memory. "This house has no heart," Emma murmured, dusting as she glanced up at a frame the size of a window. Her voice echoed back to her, sounding even colder. In the kitchen, Liam was stacking trays. "Breakfast for the master. Toast and fried eggs. And you?" He gave Emma a shrug. "Staff meal, but I saved you a croissant. Eat it before it goes cold." Emma smiled gratefully. The pastry was buttery and fragrant, but as she swallowed, she thought, breakfast here must always be the same, precise, repetitive to the minute. No late breakfast with laughter. No teasing someone for burning the eggs. She couldn't help but wonder. A man this wealthy, living in a mansion this large, and yet not a single sound of family. A house without laughter. That evening, Emma was on duty, replacing flowers in the study. She hesitated at the dark wooden door. Mrs. Sharma had warned her never to enter without permission, but also said, "If the master calls, bring the flowers to his desk." At that very moment, Julian's voice rang out, "Come in." She pushed the door open. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books. The air carried the scent of old wood mixed with the smell of new paper. In the center, Julian sat behind the desk, head bent over his computer. The lamp cast light on his face, cutting sharp shadows under his cheekbones. A thick stack of documents sat neatly beside him, not a single page out of place. "Put the flowers there." He didn't look up. His voice was steady, mechanical, like a machine giving orders. Emma carefully replaced the vase, arranging the fresh white roses with precision. She glanced around. No photographs, no keepsakes, no handwritten notes. Everything aligned, orderly, chillingly precise. As she stepped back, her eyes accidentally caught the computer screen. The schedule displayed in red. 6 a.m. Wake up, exercise. 7 a.m. Breakfast, reports. 7:30 a.m. Video meeting. 9 a.m. Office work. 11:30 p.m. Read reports. Notes for every minute, every hour accounted for. No dinner with someone, no call to family. Julian looked up just as Emma stepped back. Those gray eyes met hers, as cold as steel. "If you're done, leave." "Yes, sir." Emma bowed her head, turning to go, but that look made her think. Eyes that never rest. Late at night, Emma woke to an unusual sound. She tiptoed out of the staff room, walking quietly down the corridor. A faint golden glow spilled from the crack of the study door on the first floor. Curiosity tugged at her. She peeked inside. Julian was still at his desk. The clock read nearly 2. 0 inches the morning. His tie was off, his sleeves rolled up, yet his eyes were fixed on the screen. Piles of documents surrounded him. A half-drunk coffee sat on the desk, its stain bleeding across a sheet of paper. Gone was the daytime severity. His face now only held exhaustion. His hair had fallen slightly, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Emma held her breath. He looked like a machine running non-stop, refusing to shut down, yet even machines needed rest. Julian rubbed his temples, closing his eyes briefly. In that moment, Emma saw the loneliness covering him. No friends, no family, no laughter anywhere in this vast house. Only the scratching of pens, the rustling of papers, and the monotonous clack of keys. Emma suddenly thought of Lily, her little sister, who often studied while giggling at songs on her phone. That laughter in their tiny room had always made the whole space feel bright. Here, in a house bigger than a school, there wasn't a single smile. Her chest tightened. So, the richest man in the city could also be the poorest in the thing that mattered most. The next morning, Emma placed a small vase in the staff lounge, a soft blue hydrangea, the broken bloom she had picked up yesterday. Everyone who passed paused, smiled. Liam said, "Looking at that, this house feels a bit human." Emma nodded, her eyes lighting with quiet resolve. She knew she was just a maid, someone no one took notice of. But in her heart, a wish took root. If she had to work here, she would try to bring warmth into this cold place, even if it was just a flower, a greeting, or a clumsy smile. That evening, while cleaning the living room, Emma accidentally saw Julian sitting alone on the long sofa. No lights, only the garden's darkness beyond the glass. She froze, holding her cloth. "What are you standing there for?" His voice cut through the air, though his eyes remained on the window. "I was just cleaning the table, sir." "Then do it." Emma nodded and began to wipe. She heard a faint sigh, so soft it could have been the wind. Her heart stirred. This man, outwardly severe and cold, carried a loneliness so deep no one else could see. For a moment, Emma wanted to say, "You don't have to be alone like this." But she held back. She knew the line between master and servant. Instead, she quietly placed a fresh vase of white roses on the table, bowed slightly. "Good night, sir." Julian didn't reply, but as Emma turned, she glimpsed his eyes lingering on the flower for a very long time. By noon on the third day, Liam, the head chef, had to rush out because his daughter had a fever. "Mrs. Sharma told Emma, "Watch the kitchen. All you need to do is reheat the pot of vegetable soup the master usually eats." "Yes, ma'am." Emma nodded, anxiety bubbling inside her. She was used to cooking instant noodles or simple mashed potatoes for Lily, but had never touched a giant copper soup pot sitting on a gleaming gas stove. She lit the burner, set the soup on warm, and got distracted, wiping the counters. By the time she turned back, steam was billowing, and a strange burnt smell filled the air. Panicking, Emma turned off the flame, but it was too late. The bottom of the pot was scorched. White smoke spread across the kitchen. Emma coughed violently, rushing to open the window. Just then, Julian came down the stairs, ready for lunch. The master, accustomed to neat, orderly meals, instead found a smoky haze, and Emma frantically fanning the air with the pot lid. "What on earth are you doing?" Julian's voice dropped low. Emma froze, cheeks blazing red. Then, as if her brain suddenly improvised, she blurted out, This is a therapeutic steam soup treatment for health. Instead of eating it, you just inhale the smoke. It's great for detoxing the lungs." The room went silent for a beat. The assistant nearby nearly choked. "Mrs. Sharma quickly covered her mouth with a cough. Julian stared at her, lips pressed together, and then the unexpected happened. He let out a quiet laugh, a real laugh. Not a polite social smile, but the kind that had been buried for years. "Steam soup?" he repeated, his voice edged with sarcasm and faint amusement. Emma nodded furiously, face serious as if giving a lecture. "Yes, sir. A new wellness trend. Very fashionable. If you like, tomorrow I can research chicken soup steam therapy." The kitchen erupted with laughter. Liam had just returned, and when he heard that line, he collapsed onto a chair, clutching his stomach. "Good heavens! I've been a chef for decades, and this is the first I've heard of that dish." Julian shook his head, picked up a glass of water from the counter, and took a sip, but the smile still lingered on his lips. After lunch, when things had settled, Emma carried the steamed soup pot away to wash, her heart caught between embarrassment and relief that she hadn't been fired. On the second-floor balcony, Julian stood looking out over the garden. His assistant hesitated beside him. "Sir, should we hire a new maid?" Julian was silent for a long moment. In his mind replayed the image of the petite girl, hair slightly mussed, face flushed from smoke, yet still scrambling to joke her way out of disaster. That clumsiness wasn't calculated. It wasn't the kind of fake sweetness meant to win favor. It was genuine, instinctive. He shook his head. "No need." The assistant was surprised, but Julian offered no further explanation. His eyes only drifted down to the yard, where Emma was hanging laundry, softly humming a cheerful tune. The melody floated with the breeze, like a sliver of sunlight slipping into a house that had long gone without laughter. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Julian returned to his study. He picked up his pen to sign contracts, but his hand paused. The smoky kitchen, Emma's flustered voice declaring steam soup therapy, replayed in his mind. A faint smile, fleeting but real, touched his lips. Julian realized then how long it had been since he had smiled like this. For years, his smiles had been reserved for shareholders and handshakes at cocktail parties. But this one, natural, unexpected, had come from a clumsy maid. He leaned back in his chair, eyes lifting to the ceiling. In the vast mansion, wrapped in endless silence, he found himself whispering, "A house with laughter." That evening, Ravenwood Manor was ablaze with light, both inside and out. Julian had just hosted an extravagant dinner party with major shareholders. Luxury cars rolled out of the gates one by one, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and the fading echo of polite laughter lingering in the grand hall. Emma stood in the corner, arms wrapped around a tray of crystal glasses she had just cleared. She had quietly observed the entire process from start to finish. The guests spoke in polished phrases, raised their glasses in toasts, but their eyes were fixed only on Julian, the man whose decisions could raise their fortunes by millions with a single nod. He stood there, tall in a black tuxedo, a glass of red wine swirling in his hand, nodding to every greeting, every handshake, but Emma noticed that smile never reached his eyes. When the great door finally closed, the vast room was left with only soft light and a few staff members cleaning up. Julian turned, walking away with weariness in his stride. A thought flickered across his mind. That girl, is she truly different? In his life, Julian had encountered far too many who tried to win his favor. Some wanted money, others prestige. Even staff in his own house sometimes maneuvered to draw his attention. But Emma, clumsy, awkward, blurting out things that made no sense, was that really who she was, or just another act? He intended to find out. As Emma carried her tray into the hall, she froze at the sight of Julian stumbling down the staircase, his tie loosened, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, wineglass dangling loosely in his hand. "Sir," she gasped, rushing forward. Are you all right?" Julian leaned casually against the wall, giving a faint smirk. "I'm fine. Just a little too much wine." He pretended to take another step, then slumped onto the sofa in the living room, his knees almost buckling against the armrest. Eyes shut, his breathing deliberately heavy. Inside, Julian thought, "Now, let's see what you'll do." A girl trying to catch his attention would call loudly, make a scene, and play the caring act right in front of him. But Emma's reaction wasn't what he expected. She set the tray down on the table, running in small circles. Panicked. "Oh my gosh, drinking this much is dangerous. What should I do?" Glancing around, she darted into the kitchen. Minutes later, she returned, holding a steaming cup of golden honey water. "I read somewhere honey helps with alcohol. I don't know if it's true, but let's try." She knelt beside him, gently propping his shoulder, pressing the cup into his hand. Julian shifted slightly, pretending to shake his head. Emma didn't give up. She set the cup on the table, grabbed a cold towel, and pressed it carefully to his forehead. "Just rest for a while. You'll feel better after some sleep." Half-lidded, Julian caught her face in that moment. Flustered, determined, trembling hands that betrayed her worry, yet eyes filled only with sincerity. Not a trace of calculation, Emma perched on the edge of the sofa, silent for a long moment. Then she softly began to sing. Her voice wasn't polished, sometimes off-key, but it carried a warmth that was disarming. It was a children's lullaby she used to sing for Lily when her little sister couldn't sleep. "Sleep tight now. Sweet dreams will come. Tomorrow the sun will rise again." The simple melody floated gently through the room. A house accustomed only to footsteps and ticking clocks, Julian lay still, listening. In his faded memories, no one had ever sung him to sleep. At the orphanage, nights came with the squeak of fans, not lullabies. As an adult, nights were filled with documents and the hum of computers, but now, there was a clumsy, warm voice singing just for him. Julian's chest tightened. Suddenly, the game he was playing felt cruel. After a while, Emma saw that his breathing had steadied. His body relaxed. She exhaled in relief, then noticed something. The living room was cold. The air conditioning hummed, blowing a draft. She looked around. No blanket. No one else nearby. After a moment's hesitation, Emma slipped off her own thin coat and carefully draped it over him. It wasn't anything fancy, just a cheap beige knit, worn at the edges, but it was all she had. "Sleep well, sir," she whispered, then sat in the chair opposite, resting her head on her arm, keeping watch. Her eyes soon drooped shut from exhaustion, but she stubbornly stayed nearby. Julian cracked an eye open. The little coat was spread over him, carrying the faint scent of cheap soap mixed with a trace of jasmine. Across from him, the young woman had dozed off, head tilted, her face calm yet tired. An unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. For years, he had let no one close, and yet here she was, no pretense, no performance, just genuinely worrying for him, as if he were nothing more than an ordinary man who needed care. He let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes again. Outwardly, he remained composed, but inside, a small door had opened. At dawn, Emma startled awake. Her little knit coat had been folded neatly on the sofa armrest, and Julian was nowhere to be seen. On the table sat the honey water cup, half empty, placed carefully in its spot. Her heart skipped. Had he woken during the night? Would he be angry she had overstepped? Mrs. Sharma entered, glanced at the scene, and gave the faintest smile, a rare one Emma had never seen before. "The master has gone upstairs. You did well, Carter." Emma exhaled in relief, picking up her coat. It still held a trace of warmth. She didn't know that upstairs, in his study, Julian sat by the window, his finger brushing the rim of the honey cup. On his face, once again, flickered the faintest smile. That afternoon, the sky hung gray, blank like an unwritten page. Ravenwood Manor was so still that Emma could hear the mop head tap lightly against the cabinet leg. She had just finished cleaning the first-floor hallway when a sudden crash erupted from the study, followed by the sound of papers collapsing like waves. Her heart jolted. She rushed over and pushed the door open a crack. Julian was kneeling beside the bookshelf, a stack of heavy documents having toppled. The sharp wooden edge had struck across his left shoulder. His white shirt hung askew, 2 buttons torn open. Before Emma could even catch her breath, she saw it. The long, ugly scar she had glimpsed once before, now split with a fresh, thin tear, a line of bright red seeping out and trailing down his arm like a thread of blood. "Sir!" Emma dropped to her knees beside him. "Are you all right? Let me call a doctor." Julian's jaw clenched, his right hand bracing the floor, his left gripping his shoulder. His gray eyes flashed with his usual irritation. "No need. I'm fine." His voice was cold, clipped, final. But what fine came with that pale face? Emma leaned closer, saw the blood spreading faster. Without hesitation, she sprang up. "Then I'll get the first aid kit right now." "No need," he growled, face darkening. "It's just an old wound that's freshly torn." Emma's reply wasn't loud, but steady. "Stay still. It'll only take a few minutes." She bolted out and returned in under 30 seconds, carrying a first aid kit in one hand and a clean towel and saline solution in the other. Julian still sat there, jaw tight, small beads of sweat on his temple. On the floor, drops of blood shone like discordant notes on dark wood. Emma snapped open the kit, tearing sterile gauze. "The disinfectant will sting a little. I'm sorry in advance," she murmured. "I told you it's not necessary," he said between clenched teeth, eyes turned away. Emma's hands paused briefly. Then she met his gaze, her voice softer. "I know you don't like anyone touching your private matters, but this bleeding isn't private." She pressed the gauze gently against the tear, her hands steady, like when she used to bandage Lily's scraped knees. "Besides, if it soaks into your shirt, the fabric will tug at the skin. It'll hurt worse." Julian stayed silent, his chin angled slightly, almost like the faintest nod. Emma slid a towel under his shoulder and rinsed the wound with saline. His fingers curled tighter. The scent of antiseptic filled the air, sharp and clean. "Try breathing slowly," Emma whispered, as much for herself as for him. "Inhale. Exhale." She worked carefully, drying the torn skin, laying a gauze pad, then fixing it with tape. As she wrapped the bandage across his shoulder, her palm burned part from hurry, part from the fragile intimacy of touching the part of his life he had always hidden. "All done," she said quietly. "It isn't deep. I'll change the dressing for you tomorrow." Julian pulled at his shirt, stopping at the second button. His hand froze. Beneath the white gauze lay the old scar, long, jagged, twisting like a dried-up river, and the new tear cutting across it like a fresh canal. He turned his face away, his voice rough. "You don't need to care like this." Emma looked at him, her eyes carrying a gentleness that didn't waver. "Everyone has wounds. The real question is whether you'll let someone else bandage them." The air in the room seemed to still. The ceiling fan turned a slow circle. The light trembled faintly, and the papers on the floor fell quiet. Julian didn't answer, but in that moment, his gray eyes shifted, like the surface of a lake touched by wind, a thin ripple rising, breaking into silence, and in that ripple, a storm rose. He was a boy again, small, crouched on the floor of a narrow house with stained walls and a swaying ceiling fan. His father's trembling hand clutched a bottle. Eyes, bloodshot. "Don't make noise." The man's voice was sharp, the stench of alcohol burning his nose. Then the night of rain, each drop drumming on the tin roof as the bottle shattered, glass slicing across the boy's shoulder, burning pain, heat, blood streaming into the torn sleeve. He didn't cry out. Crying would only make things worse. He only bit his lip until it bled, vision blurring in the stench of liquor and thunder. The day his mother died, the house dimmed, like a lamp gone out. Soon after, his father too was gone one wet cold night when a car lay broken at the roadside. Alcohol had stolen laughter, then stolen family. The boy entered the orphanage. He learned to fold his bed corners into perfect squares, to lock his cries inside his chest, to harden wherever softness might remain. He swore that when he grew up, he would never drink. He would choose order over chaos, discipline over slackness. If the world wouldn't bandage him, he would bandage himself with work, with success, with the thick walls of a mansion without laughter. "Sir," Emma's voice pulled Julian back from the storm. She sat low beside him, hands on her knees now, not touching, just staying. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." Julian blinked back into the present. The bookshelf, the faint smell of antiseptic, the fresh white bandage on his shoulder. He looked down, papers scattered, one report stained with a drop of blood, no larger than a fingernail. For the first time, shame didn't come from weakness, but from realizing how long he had let old fear steer him. "No," he said, voice lowered. "You did the right thing." Emma smiled faintly, and that smile, quiet and unshowy, touched a place deep in him where lullabies had never reached. "Rest a while, sir," she said, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "I'll clean the blood and make you a cup of warm honey not to cure a hangover." She paused, recalling last night's pretend drunkenness, her eyes glinting with mischief, just to ease the pain. Julian still. Then the faint shadow of a smile brushed his lips. He nodded. Emma slipped out, the door closing softly. The room fell silent again, but this silence was different, not the silence of loneliness, but of a wound that had just been touched by a warm hand. He raised his fingers to the edge of the bandage, not pressing, just feeling. Then, in a new instinct, he stood, picked up a damp cloth, and wiped the drops of blood from the floor himself. He didn't call for anyone. He was still alone, but not as lost as before. The small act was a whispered admission. Some things can't be done alone forever. Emma returned with the honey cup, setting it on the desk. Steam curled up, carrying its soft sweetness. A presence almost foreign in this house. "Thank you," Julian said. "Yes, sir." Emma hesitated, then drew in a breath, adding bravely, "I won't ask about your past, but if one day you need someone to listen, I'll just be here." In Julian's eyes, a cloud shifted, revealing a thin strip of sky. He didn't promise, didn't explain. He simply didn't push her away. "All right," he said. Emma bowed slightly and stepped out. Just before the door shut, the round robot vacuum rolled in, beeped once, and stopped over the spot that had just been cleaned of blood. Emma tapped its forehead. "Don't make trouble today, sir. Things just hurt a little less in here." The door closed. Julian lifted the cup and sipped. Warm honey slid down his throat, spreading through his chest, seeping into the scar hidden under its fresh bandage. Outside, the sky stayed gray, but inside, the lamp's pale light felt warmer. The tear would heal. The old scar would remain, but perhaps less jagged if tended to. And maybe, he thought, setting the cup down, it was time to learn a new lesson. Not every wound needs to be hidden, and not every bandage is gauze. Sometimes it is a quiet word, a soft smile, a cup of honey, and the silent presence of a clumsy, patient girl who knows exactly when to lay her hand down. That morning, the sky was as clear as freshly polished glass. Emma was carrying a box of table linens to the back garage when she stumbled upon a curious sight. A small truck parked at the side gate, its driver busily unloading sealed cardboard boxes. On their sides was printed, "Bright Hope Orphanage, Riverside District." She stopped, intrigued. The movers worked silently, without fuss. The secrecy of it all made Emma feel as if she had accidentally stepped into something she wasn't supposed to see. "What's that?" she whispered. One of the kitchen staff shook his head and murmured, "Nothing unusual, but don't ask. The master doesn't like to show off." Emma tilted her head. The boxes were carefully labeled. Infant formula, school supplies, toys, warm blankets, and children's shoes. A weight settled in her chest. The image of Julian as cold and severe blurred, replaced by another truth. He was quietly sending warmth out into the world. He simply never let anyone see. That afternoon, when Mrs. Sharma asked Emma to bring fresh flowers to the garage, she happened to spot Julian standing beside a sleek black car. He was dressed simply in a shirt without a tie, face pensive as he signed off a manifest. Emma stayed back, afraid to intrude, but the wind carried the words of the logistics manager. As usual, we'll deliver directly to the orphanage. Today's list includes a computer set, language books, and some boxes of cold medicine. Julian gave only a small nod, then turned away. As the vehicle rolled out the gate, Emma slipped down another path, heart pounding at the thought she might be caught watching. In her mind, one question echoed. Why would a man who insists he needs no one quietly care for children he doesn't even know? The next day, while Emma was arranging flowers in the living room, Mrs. Sharma suddenly said, "Carter, come with me." They climbed into a gray van. Emma didn't even have time to ask before the van left the bustling streets and headed toward a poorer suburb. Finally, it stopped before a faded iron gate. Bright Hope Orphanage. Children in worn sweaters poured out, laughing brightly when they saw Mrs. Sharma. Some ran circles around the van, squealing as they spotted the boxes. "Set them down over there. The kids are waiting." Mrs. Sharma directed the movers. Emma watched, her chest tightening. A boy clutched a brand new pair of shoes, running and laughing. A little girl sat quietly with a picture book, eyes sparkling. Others fought playfully over packs of cookies, as if they were treasure. The master? He's the one sending all this? Emma whispered. Mrs. Sharma hesitated for a beat, then nodded. Yes, every month, but he never puts his name on it. Emma gripped the hem of her coat, a strange warmth rising inside her. In the old tiled building, a silver-haired woman emerged, her smile gentle. She embraced Mrs. Sharma. Then her gaze lingered on Emma. A new girl. Yes, I'm Emma. I'm Brooks, head of the orphanage. Mrs. Brooks led Emma around, explaining as they walked. Julian has long been connected to this place. As a child, he too had no one. After his parents died, he was moved to another orphanage, but sometimes he still came here to help. Emma's eyes widened. He grew up in an orphanage? Mrs. Brooks nodded, her gaze far away. He was quiet, often hiding in the reading corner, but I remember his eyes clearly proud, yet unbearably lonely. Every step he takes now, he built with his own hands. Emma's heart tightened. The pieces began to fit. The coldness, the rigid rules, the endless nights of work, all armor for the orphan boy he once was. A little brown-haired girl, her cheeks smudged, approached Emma, holding out a crayon drawing, a red-roofed house, inside which stood a tall man and several children. Miss, this is my dream house, she whispered. I drew Mr. Julian, too. He always sends things, but he's never eaten with us. Emma froze, staring at the drawing. In her chest, a pang of sorrow flared. Last night, she had seen Julian sitting alone, a solitary figure in the vast living room, and now, through the eyes of these children, she understood even more. He longed for a house full of laughter, but never dared step into one. On the way back to the mansion, Emma carried an ocean of thoughts in her chest. That night, she quietly placed a small potted flower in the hallway near the study, along with a handwritten note. Every house needs a bit of color, not to show off, but to remind us there is always someone waiting for us to come home. She didn't sign her name. The next morning the flower was still there, but the note was gone. In Julian's study, the usual white roses remained on the desk. Yet, in the far corner, Emma noticed her little pot had been placed neatly, not discarded. She smiled. Perhaps Julian understood. That night, Julian sat alone again. But this time his gaze lingered on the little flower. The tear on his shoulder had eased. The memory still tore at him, but the children's laughter at Bright Hope seemed to push the darkness back. He touched the pot lightly, whispering to himself, only for his ears, "One day, I'll walk through that door." And Emma, from afar, made her own promise. If he never found the courage, she would be the one to gently open that door for him. By dusk, the city sky had turned the color of heavy lead. Black clouds surged, like angry waves swallowing the sunset. Emma was folding towels in the kitchen when thunder rolled, rattling the window panes. Liam looked up, frowning. "Looks like a big storm tonight." Emma shivered. She hated thunder, hated darkness since childhood. Ever since her mother died, she carried the memory of once being accidentally locked in a dark storeroom by a careless neighbor. Little Emma had sat curled for hours, listening only to the pounding rain on the tin roof and the scratching of rats in the corners. That fear had never left her. To her, darkness meant abandonment. Just as predicted, at 8 sharp, the storm slammed into the city, winds howled, rain lashed against the glass, thunder split the sky. Then, suddenly, the power went out. The entire mansion sank into pitch blackness. "Oh no," Emma whispered, heart racing. She reached out blindly, but the more she tried, the more she knocked into things. A sharp crash rang out. She had dropped a small glass vase. The shatter echoed, blending with the thunder, ripping the heavens. In the kitchen, the others scrambled for flashlights. But Emma's legs shook uncontrollably. Her back pressed tight against the wall. All she could hear was her own ragged breathing and the relentless drumming of rain, like war drums. From the dark hallway, a flicker of light appeared. Julian approached, carrying a newly lit candle. Its golden flame wavered, softening the sharp planes of his face. He froze when he saw Emma huddled in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, eyes squeezed shut. "Carter," she startled, opening her eyes. The candlelight illuminated him. For a moment, Emma couldn't tell if he was the cold master of the house or a saving light in the storm. I'm sorry. I broke the vase," she stammered, voice trembling like a whispering insect. Julian glanced at the shards scattered on the floor, then back at her. He could have scolded her, could have barked orders as usual, but he didn't. He set the candle on the windowsill and lowered himself beside her. His voice was deep, steady. "You're afraid of the dark." Emma bit her lip and nodded. "Since I was little, I've hated stormy nights. After my mom died, I was locked in a dark storeroom. That feeling," her eyes glistened, "I just thought if it went pitch black, no one would ever come looking for me." Julian was silent. The flame stretched its shadow long across the wall. Then he spoke, voice lower than usual. "I understand." She turned to him, surprised. "At the orphanage, every night was dark," he said, leaning his head back against the wall, eyes lost in some memory. No lullabies, no bedtime stories, just rain seeping through a cracked window and insects gnawing the wood. "I used to think if I vanished in that darkness, no one would notice." His words dropped into the quiet, broken only by the storm outside. Emma gazed at his profile in the candlelight, and for the first time, she saw not steel, but weariness and loneliness etched deeper than the lines on his brow. Softly, she said, "Maybe darkness is just a reminder that everyone needs a light beside them." Julian turned, his gray eyes meeting hers, no longer an assessing gaze, just two bare souls, face to face in their private fears. Another thunderclap cracked the sky. Emma jumped, instinctively clutching his sleeve. She pulled back at once. I'm sorry," but Julian didn't brush her away. He let her hand rest lightly on his, then gently tightened his grip. A small gesture, but to Emma, it was an anchor against the storm's fury. He murmured, "No one here gets left behind. You won't either." Emma's heart fluttered. She realized that beneath the armor of coldness, Julian was still that orphan boy once trembling in the dark, and he, in his own way, was also reaching for a hand to hold. They sat together in silence. The candle cast their shadows side by side on the wall, one tall, one small, but for the first time, neither was alone. Outside, the rain eased, and thunder rumbled farther away. Lights flickered, then the power returned, and the ceiling lamps flooded the room with a cold white glow. Emma blinked at the brightness, while Julian leaned forward and blew out the candle. "Good," he said, standing. He held out his hand. "Come on, up you get." Emma placed her hand in his. This time, he didn't let go immediately, but helped her steady herself fully. In that brief moment, she felt the sure warmth of his palm. She smiled awkwardly. "Thank you for staying." Julian regarded her for a few seconds, eyes deeper than usual. Then he simply nodded, voice low. "Sometimes the only thing we need is someone who doesn't walk away in the dark." That night, Emma returned to her room with her heart still pounding, not from fear, but something else. And Julian, in his study, stood silently before the little flower pot Emma had placed days ago. He touched a petal gently, thinking, perhaps it's time to let a little light in, even through the smallest crack. The storm outside had passed, but the storms inside them had begun to find a new rhythm, not of rage, but of quiet comfort. At Ravenwood Manor, there was one rare tradition kept year after year. On Julian's birthday, the master invited all staff to dine together in the banquet hall. It wasn't a lavish affair with champagne and chandeliers, but a simple meal, enough for everyone to feel they belonged in this house too. When Liam told Emma about it, her eyes widened. A billionaire who doesn't throw a gala with wine, but sits down to eat roast chicken with his staff. Liam only shrugged, grinning. That's the young master for you. Honestly, nobody knows if he even enjoys it, but every year he keeps it up. Emma fell quiet. Birthdays for her and Lily had always meant a tiny cake bought in a rush, one candle stuck in, and loud singing to make it feel bigger than it was. She had never imagined a man like Julian even having a birthday, and surely for him, the day was just as cold as any other. The banquet room was laid out simply: roast chicken, salad, pumpkin soup, and a large cake. Staff sat at long tables, the air humming with whispers. Julian entered in a minimalist dark suit, his expression as composed as ever, but when everyone chorused, "Happy birthday, sir," he faltered for a split second, then gave a nod. A faint, polite smile touched his lips. But Emma, from the far end of the table, noticed it never reached his eyes. One by one, gifts were presented. Mrs. Sharma offered a vintage fountain pen, Liam a rare bottle of wine, the driver a collectible pocket watch, each gift elegant and expensive. Then came Emma's turn. She sat frozen, clutching the little parcel wrapped in old newspaper. Her heart hammered. What a reckless idea. But what else could she do? I have a gift for you, too, Emma said, standing, cheeks flushed. The table fell silent. A new maid giving a gift to a billionaire? Eyes darted, curious, skeptical. Julian fixed his gray gaze on her, as if issuing a challenge. "Miss Carter." Emma swallowed hard, placing the tiny package on the table. I didn't have money for anything fancy, so I made this myself. He unwrapped it. Inside lay a drawing in colored pencil. A small red-roofed house, windows glowing with light. Children laughed and played outside. On the porch stood a tall man, vaguely resembling Julian. In the corner, a cat curled up asleep. The staff murmured. Liam clapped a hand over his mouth, stifling a chuckle. Emma's panic spilled into words. "As always, I'm sorry if it's ugly, but, nobody would ever buy this, so it's one of a kind." Laughter rippled around the table. The tension eased. "If you don't like it, I can draw again. Add a pool, a garage full of supercars to suit the mansion. But I think a house with laughter is more luxurious than all of that." She blinked, half teasing, half serious. More laughter. Mrs. Sharma shook her head, sighing, but her eyes held warmth. Julian didn't laugh loudly like the others. He stayed silent, eyes lingering on the drawing. The lines were clumsy, the colors uneven, but every detail breathed life. Light glowing from the windows. A flower pot by the porch. Invisible laughter carried through the scene. In his mind, Emma's voice echoed, "A real home doesn't need extravagance. It just needs light, and someone waiting for you to come back." A tightness pulled in his chest, as if an invisible string had wound around it. For years, birthdays had been nothing but another entry in his schedule. But tonight, in his hands was the most awkward and the truest gift. He looked up, catching Emma's anxious expression, like a kitten that had knocked over a vase, bracing for scolding, and he said, voice low but no longer cold, "Thank you, Carter. This is the most special gift I've ever received." The room went still, then erupted into applause. Emma's face turned crimson. She muttered under her breath, "Special? Because it's the ugliest, right?" Liam burst out, laughing so hard he nearly choked on his soup. When the others had gone, Julian remained, gazing at the drawing before him. The warm lamplight made the colors glow richer. In his memories, birthdays had meant nothing more than a bottle of liquor rolling across the table in angry voices. At the orphanage, they were just another day spent reading alone. But now, someone had dared to give him a home in a picture. Something he had never allowed himself to dream, he thought quietly. Maybe a home isn't a place of grandeur, but the place where someone waits for you. A faint smile touched his lips, not a polite one, but the smile of a man allowing himself, for the first time, to hope. News has a way of spreading faster than any storm. Just one day after the birthday dinner, a blurry photo of Julian Ravenwood smiling at Emma's drawing appeared on several online tabloids. The headline blared, "Cold Billionaire Ravenwood softened by a poor maid." Sitting in the staff lounge, Emma's old phone buzzed nonstop with messages from friends. Her hands shook as she scrolled, seeing endless comments. "She's definitely a gold digger. Knows how to get attention. He's only amused for now." Her chest felt unbearably heavy. For the first time, Emma understood what it meant to be picked apart under the world's spotlight. That day, Julian attended a business gathering at a five-star hotel. Emma went along to help with flowers and serving drinks. She tried to stay quiet, invisible like a shadow, but it wasn't so easy to escape curious eyes. In the grand hall, a noblewoman, Victoria Klein, head of a famed investment group, swept toward them. She wore a deep emerald velvet dress, a string of pearls around her neck, her smile as sharp as a knife. Victoria's gaze skimmed Emma from head to toe, then curved into a cutting smirk. "So, this is Ravenwood's new muse. How amusing a maid daring to step into this world. Bold indeed." Emma flushed crimson, stumbling back a step. I'm only doing my job." Victoria lowered her voice, just loud enough for Emma to hear. "Don't think a childish little sketch can tie down a man like Julian. Men like him entertain themselves for a while. Then you'll be tossed aside like the rest." Nearby guests chuckled under their breath. Emma's face burned, her chest clenched, as if someone had gripped her heart tight. At that moment, Julian appeared, his long stride cutting across the floor, gray eyes gleaming with steel. "Victoria," his voice was low, decisive. "I believe you've gone too far." The hall stiffened. Victoria arched a brow. "I only spoke the truth, Julian. Surely you don't waste your energy on a mere maid." "She is not a mere maid," Julian's voice thundered, sharp enough to slice the room into silence. "Emma Carter is someone I respect, and anyone who insults her insults me." All eyes turned, stunned. The business world was used to seeing Julian as cold, calculating, never defending anyone publicly. For the first time, he said it openly, with dozens of witnesses within earshot. Victoria faltered, then forced a brittle smile before turning away, leaving ripples of murmurs in her wake. Emma stood frozen, ears ringing, his words still echoing. "Someone I respect." Her heart pounded, joy trembling through her, only to be swallowed quickly by fear. She looked around, camera flashes sparking, reporters scribbling, businessmen whispering. Tomorrow's headlines would explode, and she knew the scandal wouldn't just touch Julian. It could shake his entire empire. On the ride back to the manor, Emma sat in the rear seat, fingers twisting the hem of her blouse. Julian stared out the window, silent. The air in the car pressed heavily, like lead. He had defended her. But at what cost? That night, Emma lay in her small bed, eyes wide open. The wind howled past the garden windows, but it wasn't half as frightening as the storm inside her. Victoria's words echoed. "You'll be tossed aside." The flashes of cameras burned behind her eyes, and above all, Julian's figure, tall and unyielding, shielding her with a voice that cut through the hall. "Anyone who insults her, insults me." What tears spilled. Emma buried her face in the pillow, whispering to herself, "I can't let him get dragged into trouble because of me." She sat up abruptly, pulled open a drawer, and took out a sheet of paper. Her hands shook as she wrote a few trembling lines of resignation. Only one reason, short and plain. "I don't want to cause the master any more problems." Emma slipped the letter into her bag, telling herself she would leave it on Mrs. Sharma's desk in the morning and then disappear. Her gaze lifted to the window. She remembered the little drawing she had once given Julian, now hung prominently in the living room. The thought made fresh tears spill. "I'm sorry, Julian," she whispered into the dark, "but I can't stay." Dawn broke, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, bathing the manor in pale gold. The household buzzed with its usual rhythm, pots bubbling in the kitchen, hoses hissing across the garden. But Emma's heart felt as heavy as stone. Inside her worn fabric bag lay a neatly folded letter of resignation. She walked slowly down the hall, each tap of her shoes echoing like a drumbeat in her ears. With every step, she wanted to stop, but she forced herself on, whispering inwardly, "For him. I have to go so he won't suffer anymore, because of me." In the living room, she slipped the letter under the silver tray on the table. She looked up. Her drawing still hung there. Morning light made the windows in the picture glow gold, as if truly alive. Her throat tightened. "Goodbye," she whispered. She turned, walking quickly to the front door. But just as her hand touched the handle, a familiar deep voice sounded behind her. "Carter." Emma froze. Her heart lurched. No, not now. She turned. Julian stood only a few steps away, shirt dark, tie still undone, clearly fresh from the stairs. In his hand, her letter, his gray eyes darkened, like a storm breaking. "What is this?" Emma swallowed hard. Just a resignation letter. Why? His question cut like a blade, quiet but sharp. Emma lowered her head, fingers gripping the strap of her bag. Because I don't want to cause you more trouble. The media is already saying enough. People out there think I'm a gold digger. If I leave, things will calm down again. Silence stretched. The curtains stirred with the draft. Light flickering across the floor, Julian stepped closer, his voice rough, as if holding back something fierce. You think I care more about what they say than I care about you? Emma lifted her tear-brimmed eyes. You defended me, but that only means you take the blows. I don't want. Julian cut her off, crushing the paper in his hand until it crumpled. His voice trembled with restrained force. Don't you understand? I've never defended anyone in my life. Never. But yesterday, I did because He broke off, eyes flashing with inner conflict, but then the words slipped free before he could stop them. Because I care about you. The world seemed to freeze. Emma's eyes widened, her lips parted, but no words came. Julian himself stood stunned. He hadn't expected to say it aloud. In that instant, his cold armor cracked, exposing a bare, unguarded heart. He turned his face aside, but he didn't retract it. His voice was lower, steadier. If you leave, I'll lose the only thing that makes me believe this place could ever be a home. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. She had never imagined a man like Julian, disciplined as steel, cold as marble, could say such words. She let out a trembling laugh through her tears, clumsy and wry in her own way. Do you realize you just confessed to me? Julian turned back, gray eyes glinting, though his tone stayed controlled. If you want to call it that, then call it that. Emma wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, voice shaking. I have nothing. No money. No status. The only things I can offer are burnt soup and messy sketches. You don't need someone like me. Julian stepped closer, standing directly before her. His hand brushed the strap of the bag she clutched. Wrong. Those things made me laugh, and I'd forgotten how to laugh until you. His words resonated deep, carved straight into Emma's chest. Outside, the sun climbed higher, flooding the great hall with light. Emma looked into his eyes, not cold now, but open, sincere. She nodded faintly, whispering, I'll stay. A fleeting smile curved Julian's lips. He let the crumpled letter slip from his hand, falling to the floor. Good, because I won't allow you to leave. Emma let out a wet laugh. You really are bossy. You know that. Julian shrugged lightly. I am, but only with you. They stood there, sunlight streaming through tall windows, their hands still not fully apart, in a mansion once so cold. At last came a morning not only bright with light, but with a confession unguarded and undeniable that changed everything, and Emma felt it. The turning point had arrived. The world outside might be cruel, but in that moment, they had chosen to stay together. One Sunday morning, instead of locking himself in his study as usual, Julian appeared in the garage in a simple shirt, no tie. Emma was stunned to see him preparing to leave with several boxes stacked neatly. Sir, where are you going today? Bright Hope Orphanage, he replied shortly. Then, after a pause, do you want to come? Emma's heart leapt. She nodded so fast, she looked like a child invited to a fair. When the car arrived, the children came rushing out, squealing as they surrounded it. Emma immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, drawing whiskers on their faces, turning each child into a kitten or tiger. The courtyard rang with laughter. Julian stood back, watching, his lips curved faintly. A few reporters present captured that moment. The famously cold billionaire, smiling as he looked at a clumsy young maid playing with children. The next day, headlines spread everywhere. Julian Ravenwood, the icy billionaire, and the girl of goodwill, the golden couple of kindness. This time, instead of mockery, the public was flooded with praise. Reading comments on an old phone, Emma chuckled. They're calling us the golden couple now. But I think it's just because gold makes a loud clang when you hit it. Not because we're classy. Julian glanced at her, suppressing a laugh. Deep down, he knew it was that cheeky voice of hers that made his world lighter. One afternoon, while dusting the staircase, Emma suddenly blurted out, as if she'd discovered something grand. Sir, why does this mansion have so many empty rooms just sitting here? What if we opened one up for orphans to come learn, read, and play? Julian frowned. This is a private residence, Carter. I'm not saying turn the whole place into a school. She put her hands on her hips, eyes sparkling. Just one room. Imagine it. Kids practicing their ABCs here, the smell of Liam's cookies wafting in, and my flowers blooming by the window. Doesn't that sound nice? He hesitated, then unexpectedly nodded. Fine. And so, An unused room was transformed into a community reading room. New shelves, small tables and chairs, bright rugs. Emma even taped up the children's drawings on the walls. On opening day, the room echoed with laughter, recited alphabet, and Liam pretended to be a monster to chase the kids. Emma looked around and caught Julian standing by the doorway, arms folded, but his eyes softened, a small smile tugging at his lips. At last, Ravenwood Manor had laughter. Soon, it wasn't just once. The press grew accustomed to seeing Julian and Emma together at charitable events. He funded scholarships. She taught kids to draw and bake cookies. One day, a reporter asked her outright, "Miss Carter, what's your secret to keeping hold of such a cold billionaire?" Emma blinked, looking serious. Though only for a few seconds. "Easy. I burn soup, draw ugly birthday sketches, and make him laugh when he doesn't want to." Who could survive that kind of torture? The room burst into laughter. Julian, standing beside her, gave his first wide, unrestrained smile in public. The photo spread across every platform. The golden couple of high society, in love and in service to the community. Julian didn't care for the title, but when Emma waved the newspaper at him excitedly, he only muttered, "Golden couple sounds like a mouthwash brand." Emma doubled over laughing. Bit by bit, the mansion transformed. The living room was filled with the sound of piano notes. As Emma practiced with the children, the back garden bloomed with flowers, and even a swing was added. Dinner no longer meant two lonely plates, but often included Liam, Mrs. Sharma, and the children who were invited to join. One evening, after everyone had left, Julian and Emma sat on the veranda, moonlight spilling across the garden. "I used to think happiness was a luxury," Julian said quietly, gazing at the flower pot Emma had planted. "But you've turned it into something simple. I can reach." Emma tilted her head, grinning mischievously. "Then you'd better hold on tight. If you lose it, I'll draw 100 more ugly pictures and hang them all over this manor just to remind you." Julian laughed, an open, warm laugh that lingered. Emma's heart swelled. At last, this man had learned how to truly smile. 1 year later, on Julian's next birthday, Ravenwood Manor opened its doors not just to staff, but to orphans and struggling families. The reading room had become a community hub filled with drawings, books, and music. Julian and Emma stood hand in hand as they announced the founding of the Ravenwood Carter Foundation, dedicated to helping orphans and the poor. When the cameras flashed, Julian didn't pull away as he once would have. He let Emma hold his hand tightly, smiling naturally. In the grand hall, Emma's awkward little birthday drawing, once wrapped in old newspaper, hung framed, honored like a symbol. Visitors saw it and understood. A true home doesn't need luxury, only light and laughter. That night, after the guests departed, Emma sat on the garden swing while Julian pushed gently from behind. "Julian, do you think this house is finally a home now?" she asked. Eyes bright, he leaned closer, whispering in her ear, "Yes, because of you." Emma laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. Overhead, birthday fireworks burst, scattering color across the sky. In the chorus of children's cheers, in the peals of laughter echoing through the garden, two people who had once lived in shadows had found light in each other. And from that night on, Ravenwood Manor was no longer cold and silent, but a home alive with joy, a symbol of love, hope, and the good that grows when two hearts finally dare to open